everybody. Thank you for joining us today for Making Dynamics GP Work Simpler and Easier with GP Toolbox, presented by Roxton Software. So before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping items. We'll do introductions, and on the line with us today is myself, Lisa Cummings, with Inactivity Artists, and I also have Alicia Weigel from Roxton Software, who will be doing the presentation for us today. And if you could, when we go through the presentation, if you'll hold all your questions until the end, and then we'll address those once the presentation is completed. And we will be recording the presentation, so we'll send that out as well. So if you need to go back and just kind of refresh your memory on something we covered, you'll get the recording so that you can review it later as well. Also, Vision 2019 registration is open, and if you register on the early bird pricing, you will get $50 off your registration. So you can go to www.internetiartist.com/vision and get registered. It's going to be a 2-day event from April 23rd to the 24th at the Ritz-Carlton again. At this time, I am going to turn the webinar over to Alicia.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. And everybody able to hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys all for coming today. I know it's right after lunch, so hopefully we can keep everybody awake for the presentation. But I just want to thank the Inactivity Artist team for inviting me to stop by today and show you guys some of our cool GP tools. So for those of you that might not be familiar with Roxton, we are primarily a GP ISV partner. So we sell 5 add-on products that enhance the functionality of your Dynamics GP. And the product that we're going to look at today is our Dynamics GP Toolbox. And what this is a collection of about 27 different tools that weren't really big enough to be a product, so to speak. So we got all these ideas, great ideas from customers, from partners at places like GPUG and user group meetings, and they give us these amazing ideas, but like I said, not quite big enough to be a whole product. So we've combined all of those awesome features into one toolkit. So when you purchase our product, you're getting all 27 tools, as well as long as you're keeping up on your maintenance, you're getting access to any new tools that we develop and put in there. And since I've started, I believe we've added like 8 new tools. So it's constantly undergoing development and getting new features added to it. And how we break the product out is we have them by different categories. So our tools are under security tools, admin tools, business process, and then our user experience tools are pieces of the software that anybody that touches GP would be able to access. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to show you guys a few of the customer favorites that we get lots of calls on and we've had great reviews from the artist teams for. So we're going to jump right into GP here. And we are going to open up our toolkit. And this is where we hide the majority of our tools. It's all under here. You can see the different features. There's also more up in our menu bar. But the first one I always like to hit on is our security manager. And this is because GP security can be kind of a beast to work with. If you're familiar with trying to, change roles, create tasks, build on those tasks, things like that, it can be really cumbersome, and it's also kind of hard to report on. So what we've done is we've created basically a grid formatted window that allows you to see what your users can access. So if we come in here, you can select from multiple companies if you have them. So I've just got my 2, so we're looking at Fabricam. Then I get to pick what filter do I want to look at? So right now I'm rolling through my GP roles, but it does come pre-filtered with some additional pieces. So who has access to what smart lists, what windows, what posting permissions, and then you have the ability to create your own too once you kind of get comfortable with it. So we've got our legend. We know what our icons stand for. So once we picked those two options, this is where you get to pull in your users. So these are GP users across the top, and I can select from a whole big list. It's going to pull in all my users for that particular company that I'm looking at. So I could select one user, maybe compare and contrast two, or pull in a whole department if I wanted to. Then lastly, you pick how much details you want this to show you. What's cool about this window is whatever you have in it is dynamic, meaning that it's all going to print out into a nice report for you when you're done. So I could look really high level, look at roles only. I could see the tasks that build up those roles, or in what my view is roles, tasks, and details, I'm able to see the windows that are included in that task as well as any reports. So you can kind of see how these all kind of scale up and roll into the next piece and eventually into that role. Now at the intersection of a role and a user, that's where we see whether or not you have security to that piece. So here Ryan is the only one that doesn't have access to Accounting Manager. But if perhaps Sarah and Tammy were taking a day off and Ryan needed to fill in, we could right-click and then flip him from no to yes. And then that would update all of the tasks and the pieces below and give him access to that role. Now, like I said, you can print all of this out. So for example, with your essays or maybe your managers, if you want to show an auditor what's everything that that particular user can access, just come in, pull up that role level, grab this particular view, and then print it out, and it's going to show every single piece of GP that they can hit. So it provides a really clear document that you're able to give to an auditor. Another cool feature is that this can all be exported. So if it's easier for you to work in an Excel file, or if you want to have a cool backup of all your security as of this time, you can export this all to Excel. You can make your changes in Excel or save that file in case of an emergency. But if you decide you want to import it in, then once you've imported, that's going to roll down to all of this and make those modifications to your security. So you don't even have to be in GP to do it, just have to bring it back in through the import. So it's a really cool functional window that gives you a little bit more of a bird's eye view of what's actually happening in your security without having to go through all of the standard GP reports and functions. So this is a pretty cool product or feature of the product. Next one I'm going to show you guys is Inactivity Timeout. Probably the one I get the most calls on because we all have users that log into GP and never leave. This is the key to getting them to leave. So when we open this up, to enable a tool is about as easy as it gets. You just mark the little checkbox, enable. Now you know how to implement. You're going to set a standard number of minutes. So kind of your default. If you don't fall into a user group, you fall into the default. So everybody gets a default of 2 hours of inactivity in GP before we're going to gracefully log them out. Now what a graceful logout is basically the same as doing a file close or coming out and clicking on your X up in the corner. We want to completely remove that user from the activity table, so then that frees that license up for another user to log in and be able to utilize GP. If you find that you're bumping up against that license max on a regular basis, this is a great tool that might save you that $3,000 user license by just getting the toolkit and being able to log those users out. Now, if this one kind of one-size-fits-all doesn't actually fit all, the default doesn't work, you can use user groups. So I've created a couple of different ones. I have my admins, and I've excluded them from my inactivity timeout. That means they can sit idle as long as they want, but SA is not really hogging too many licenses, so we'll leave them alone. But then I've got my light users. So if I open this up, I can come in here, I can plug users in, just highlight them and insert them into the group, save it, and then that group, in this case, is only getting 30 minutes of inactivity before I log them out. So these might be guys that are down in the docks, they're entering in some inventory, and then they're leaving their computer or their workstation open for the rest of the day, and now somebody who's trying to run payroll can't get in. So we're trying to avoid that happening. So by setting these different user groups, we find that that is super helpful. You can go as far as even scheduling when you want this tool turned on. So Monday through Friday, that's when you guys are probably the busiest. Most people are trying to get into GP. So this is turned on then, but I shut it off at 5:01 on Friday, and I leave it off until 8 o'clock Monday morning. You don't have to use a schedule, but if for some reason you'd like to, it's available. Now there's usually a few questions on this tool around what is an activity and am I going to get kicked out when I'm trying to do something. So what we're looking for as far as an activity goes is a push or a pull of data from your tables. So basically that means if you're in the middle of posting a batch, and maybe a batch takes 2 hours to post, or you're running a really lengthy report, those are considered activities. We're not logging you out in the middle of those processes. Same if you're midway through a transaction. So say you have a PO out there and you got 5 lines entered, and you get up and you leave your workstation. At that point, we're not going to log you out because we don't know what to do with that purchase order. Do we post it? Do we delete it? Do we save it? What do we do? So if we need a response from the end user like that, save, delete, post, at that point, we're just going to flash a really annoying message on your screen saying, please complete your work, GP is trying to close. But we're not actually going to close that session out because we don't want to put bad data into your system. However, if you've got 12 windows open and you've got nothing going on other than you're just looking at data, at that point, coming in and wiggling your mouse around is not an activity. So we're going to close all 12 windows and we're going to close you out of the session. This will work in web client as well. The only thing with a Citrix environment, we'll close you out of a Citrix or a terminal server session of GP, but we won't actually remove you from that terminal server session. So it's just working with the GP side of things. But this tends to save folks a lot of dollars when it comes to those user licenses. It also gives you a report so you can see who are you kicking out on a regular basis. So maybe you can go hammer it into their heads that maybe you should log out of GP once in a while. So that is inactivity timeout. Similar to inactivity timeout is login logging. So if we turn this guy on, these two tools can be used in conjunction with one another. The login logging is actually a way for you to report on how often are you maxing out your user count. Are you hitting that threshold, once a week? Are you hitting it once a month? Or are you hitting it every single day? So the two can be used together to see when is it really time to buy that new user and have that document or that, report in your hand when you go and ask for those dollars to purchase that additional license. So this will send your SA or your toolbox administrator, whoever you'd like to get an email, a message when you've hit that threshold that you indicate that number of times. So it's just kind of a secondary way for you to make sure that you're spending dollars where they're needed. So that is login logging. Some of the other pieces I'm going to show you, we're going to look at some of the user experience. So when you think of Toolbox, it's not just a system administrator toolkit. There are pieces in here for everybody. So we're going to go and we're going to take a look at Mentor, which is this little block M at the top. And if we click on this, This is great for your users that might not be very familiar with the navigation around GP. So maybe they're new to the system, they're new to your company. It's also great for trying to find a window that you don't go to on a regular basis. So it might be your year-end close window. It might be check links, something like that. What we have you do is you tell us whatever you know about that window, as much detail as you can think of, even if it's not right. So I've got paid trans in here. I'm going to hit tab, and this is going to go through all of the windows in my third-party products and in my GP products and bring back the closest results. The little green check mark indicates that I have security to that window. And then, for example, this is what I was actually looking for, paid sales transaction removal, so paid trans, not close. If I look at it, you can see it's sort of teaching me the path. So it's under tools, routine sales. But rather than having to browse to that, I can just double click and it will open that window right up for me if I have security to it. So it's getting me there quicker and more efficiently than hunting around GP for it. I can also add a shortcut if that's something that I'm going to want to come to on a regular basis. So then I can just toss it over on the side here. And the nice thing about this tool, if you're a Toolbox administrator, is you get an additional button. So say that Lisa came to me and she needs to get access to this window. Well, I might not know how to give her access, so I can look her up in Mentor, and I get this cool little security button here. And if I click on it, this is going to show me exactly the security that I need to give in order for Lisa to get access to that paid sales transaction window. I can even go and pull her in, so we'll just pretend that's her. I can select a different company, and then this is showing me that that window only lives in this admin sales 14 task, and that task is associated with one of these 3 roles. I can click on the role to see what else they're going to get, or I can just double click and give her access right here. So I can change that stop sign into a check mark and give her security. Now granted, if you already have a check mark showing, you do have access, but for the example, that's how this would work. So we're trying to make it even easier to figure out your security without ever having to even look at it on the GP side. All right. Period open and close. This is another great one for those of you that might have more than one GP company. If you've ever had to come into the period open and close window, you'll notice that you can get a little bit dizzy staring at open, 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 open for however many periods and all of your modules. That can be really kind of an eye-opening experience if you try to go in and make sure that you've actually closed all of these individual periods. So with our mass period open and close, you can come in here, you can select as many companies as you like, and then just highlight them, and you can close them based on the individual series, all your series, or the entire fiscal year. And that's going to do it in all the companies that you've selected in one go. So I've just closed all of my sales periods. We look there and there in both my companies. Now, if you closed them by accident or you need to reopen them, not a problem. You just go to the open and reopen. And you can also generate your next fiscal year as long as your period setups are the same across those companies from here too. We had one customer that had 142 companies, so this saved him a lot of time. He actually had a contract worker come in 2 days a month just to click, double click, open, open to close. So maybe a big example there, but that's one more reason why you could have it. Next one I'll show you guys is Popups. Now, if you've ever tried to get your users to read a user guide or to follow particular steps and they're really struggling with, you know, I asked you to do this, please do this when you're here, Popups might be a good way to get information in front of those users. So what these are are notes attached to windows. So every time my users open up my payables manual payment entry window, I've got a note that pops out at them and says, hey, verify the checkbook ID before you process a manual payment. And if it's over $1,500, you need to have it approved by Nancy. This is a great way to put those steps or whole user guide pages into these notes. I've got several customers that use this especially for new hire training, that they want them to see these. You can make these notes expire when you want to. You can have them effective for different periods of time throughout the system. So maybe it's only on their first time they've opened the window versus every other time, or you can leave it open all the time. It's up to you as the Toolbox administrator to decide what that period of time is. But think of this as a way to really hammer in information that you want your users to follow. Now on the other side, as an end user, maybe I'm new to the system and I have my own process or my own little reminders that I want to include. If I come up to additional, I can enter a My Note. And when you install Toolbox, this is going to throw this into the additional menu of every single window in your system. Excuse me. So when I go to enter a My Note, I can plug that information in, and then it's going to appear in my My Note section. So maybe I just need a little reminder myself that I don't need everybody in the company seeing. So these are going to be user-specific notes, whereas these are system-wide notes. So we're just trying to give you that little extra place to plug that information in. Tips. We have a lot of customers that will use this for an inspirational quote, or maybe you found a tip in GP that, you know, makes something work way faster or does something really cool. You can plug those tips in for the tip of the day, and you can change those whenever you like. Now, those are for your window level notes. You might also find that you want record-specific notes. So we've got the option of doing those as well. So for example, every time I grab Berry Medical, I'm going to have this little note pop out at me, letting me know that these guys are a VIP customer that always gets 20% off their sales transactions, and that Alicia likes their dog. That might not be relevant, but basically what this is doing is you can set pop-up objects on record level notes. So if we drill into that customer ID, this is that little yellow sticky note that you might otherwise overlook and just kind of pass by. So this pops those notes out on specific records. So whether it's items, maybe you've got some upsell stuff you want put in front of your end users. Hey, if you sell this set of water skis, make sure you sell a rope with it. So there's different ways you can use that, but it works on customers, items, vendors, all over the place, accounts. So we just want you to be able to get those notes to pop out. Excuse me, I'm still kind of recovering from talking all week last week at Summit. All right, so give you a couple more tools here before we sign off, because I know we've only got 30 minutes. Let's see, the last one I wanted to show you guys is our security what if. So this is sort of an edit list for you for your security. If you want to see what new pieces of functionality are your users going to be able to get if you give them a new role, without having to stare at it and say, oh, well, this one overlaps with this role, this window overlaps with that role. They already have that. With Security What If, you can come in, you can pull up a user, you're pulling up a company, and deciding if you're going to grant access or revoke access to this role, what is anything new that they're going to get or lose. So if we bring that up, this analyzes that bookkeeper role that I have set up, and this is showing me all the new windows, reports, and smart lists that she's going to get access to. So it's not showing me any of the stuff that she already has. It's all brand new. And then from here, I could decide, yep, that looks great. You can print this out, show it to a manager if you need to. But then once you've okayed it, you can grant access here, or if you're on the revoke, this will flip to a revoke button. So just kind of giving you that extra level of, hey, we've checked all of our, dotted our I's, crossed our T's on our security roles. We want to make sure everybody is getting what they need. So that is another option to use. Let's see if I have time for one more here. Okay, I think I do. System Lockout. This is another administration tool. However, you could kind of consider this a security tool as well. If you have ever needed to restore a backup from a catastrophic event, or you need to, put on your new payroll year-end updates, you want to run maintenance, you're installing a service pack or you're upgrading, and you want to make really certain that your users are not in the system, you can use the system lockout, and you could do an immediate system lockout, which essentially is going to use the same methods of activity, or it's going to look for that activity that we look for with the inactivity timeout, and it's going to say, okay, these people are doing stuff. We can't kick them out. But if you're not, it's going to pop up a message that you write saying, hey, we're doing system maintenance. We need to shut this down. And it's going to remove them from the system, and it's going to lock them out of either all of your companies or one select company. Now, catastrophic events, you might want to do immediate, but if you're looking at more of a controlled, upgrade, something like that, you can plug in a time frame here. So you don't have to worry about coming in and unlocking GP. It's going to happen for you automatically. And you still have the option of excluding certain user groups from this tool. So for example, you want to make sure an admin can still get into GP, or you're going to have locked yourself out. That would be bad. So don't lock yourself out, but you have that option to include some and not others. So we tried to make it a flexible tool that would work in a lot of your different situations, whether it be a restore or if you're doing maintenance. All right, with that, I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'll just touch on a couple things and then I'll open it up for any questions that you guys might have. But if you're interested in seeing more tools, we covered about 8 or so here. There's 19 more to go. So if you're interested in looking at any other tools, let your rep at Artis know, and they can reach out to us, and we can get you a demo. We also have demos out on our website, and we do offer free 30-day trials. So if you want to test these out and see if you can make use out of enough of them, make sure it works for you, that's totally fine. Just let your reps know, and they can reach out, and we'll get you those free trial keys. So you're actually using your own data and seeing how it's going to work in your live system. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Lisa, and we can go from there.
Thank you, Alicia. That was very helpful. So we do have one question. What is the pricing for the product?
So the product is $270 per full system user, and that's a one-time cost. And then what you're going to do is match the number of concurrent licenses you have in GP with that same number of Roxton licenses. So if you have 5 GP users, you would purchase 5 Toolbox users. And then there is a 20% maintenance that includes unlimited support.
Okay, great. All right, well, I don't have any more questions in the queue. So at this time, what we will do is conclude the session. If you do have any more questions, please follow up with either Chelsea Schlupp, Ashley Canale, or myself, and we are happy to direct you with anything you need to know, pricing questions. If you need those 30-day free reg keys, we'll help you get that all set up. And Alicia, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.